Right, I think we ought to begin. The numbers are climbing, but we'll give a couple of minutes. We've given a couple of minutes for people to join. I think it's good that we press on because we've got a lot to talk about today. Thank you very much for joining us today on this wonderful session. Just to let everybody know, this session is being recorded and amplified on various channels. My name is Michelle Collin, and I look after partner marketing for EMEA at ServiceNow. We are in partnership today with Engage ESM, which is an Atos company, and we are delighted to welcome our guest speakers today. We've some fantastic speakers today that I am pleased to introduce you to, but in just 1 minute, I'll touch on that. But allow me to introduce you to Hannah Horsham, who is our commercial sales lead for Engage ESM. Welcome, Hannah. Nice to have you here with us.
Thanks, Michelle.
I just want to say a thank you to you, Hannah, and your team for driving this event with us and bringing the great interested parties to this webinar today. So for our audience, any questions that you may have, please put them in the Q&A. We will be monitoring them there with Hannah and her team, and the ServiceNow team are monitoring them as well. As with all of our listeners today, anything that we don't get to, we will do our best to do that throughout the event, but anything that we don't get to, we will try and do following on from the event. So I'm hoping that any questions you have, please feel free to post them in the group chat. We also have our very own Chris Pope, who is Global VP of Innovation at ServiceNow. He has a wealth of experience working at and with large organizations globally. He's a well-published author and contributor to many leading digital publications and blogs, both in and out of ServiceNow. He also has a C-level experience across product management and strategy. Chris will be giving us his take on what this pandemic means to businesses large and small. Chris will say a big hello to you very soon. And we've also got, excuse me, our customer that's been brought to us today by Atos, who is the CIO at Coventry Building Society, the second largest building society in the UK. He is an award-winning and highly regarded board-level business transformation executive. My gosh, that's a mouthful, put my teeth back in. And he will also be joining Chris to tell us about his experiences and how his organisation has managed with this pandemic. Welcome to Steve as well. So with no further ado, we'll give you our third amazing guest, of which I'm sure is one of the many reasons why we have a good level of interested listeners with us today. Our guest comes from IDC. She is an associate research director operating in the European future of work. And she's here today to talk about what has permanently changed as a result of the pandemic while we are navigating the new way with the future of work, and that is Angela Salmeron. Hi, Angela, lovely to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Michelle, and delighted to be here as well. Right, so
if you'd just like to share your screen, that would be awesome.
Do that.
Yay, we're there. This is awesome.
Very good. So you can see my slides now, can you?
We can indeed. If you'd just like to go to the shows, that would be brilliant. Marvelous.
Very good. Apologies about the delay. So thank you so much, everyone. Delighted to be part of this event. And what I'm going to present today, hopefully in the next 20 minutes, is I want to show you the importance of the future of work as we navigate this new normal, which is very, very uncertain. What I want to emphasize in this session is, yes, we need digital first, but also we need a human first approach, because when you combine digital with human, that has definitely an impact on the business. So I'm going to start with the quote from the Alan Job. He's the CEO of Unilever. And he mentioned, about, obviously, I believe this quote came right at the beginning of the pandemic. And something, I love this quote, I mean, if you can read it, it's at the very end when he said, let's leave our baggage behind. And what this means is that, yes, the pandemic has been a big blow to the world and to the most as well developed economies of the world. But we have to see, the silver lining in this situation we are in. We have to be positive. We have to be hopeful. And I love the reset that Alan Job is proposing. A reset in which we can think that what we have in front of us is better, and therefore it's an opportunity for change. And as Michelle mentioned, when she was introducing me and the session, what has permanently changed in this pandemic? So what we know is what we obviously hear, listen, and we get from our surveys. We know, and this is very much recent, from October, that the areas that have permanently changed are particularly two areas. One is internally, employees, the way we work. And we were talking just before this session about here internally, the team, all the changes we have right now, and we will be experimenting very soon. So internally, how the workplace has changed. But the second biggest area as well is how we engage with customers, how we support customers. On the left side of this graph, you can see 5 different areas. I've just mentioned the 2 big areas: workplace and the way we interact with employees. But obviously, the technologies enabling employees and customers have also changed. Has changed the network architecture, because we need resiliency, we need a flexible network, we need definitely cloud, and cloud has changed. We have embraced cloud, and it's not just the solutions, meaning apps, it's also cloud infrastructure, and it's security, right? It's about data loss prevention, it's about obviously encryption, threat management. Why? Because the way we work, right, is you and I working from home. Hopefully soon we will be able to travel. People will be working in different ways. And it's not just internally, it's also externally, as we engage and work with partners and customers. More and more systems and platforms are open to the ecosystem. So this is what has permanently changed. And obviously it has had an impact in the digital economy. Digital transformation has been positioned as the panacea to survive and thrive in this new reality. And here now on the right side, you can see some figures, right? Between 2020, 2025, we expect a spending of $3 trillion just in digital transformation. How many times we've heard that saying? I think 2 years of digital transformation in 2 weeks. And this is the pace of acceleration we are seeing in digital transformation. But let me tell you something more. Because while it's true that, yes, companies are seeing digital transformation as the panacea, and this is where the journey is going, we are seeing that journey, the road is very bumpy. Here you can see in this graph the different stages of economic recovery, right? Business continuity, cost control, resiliency, growth, finally the digital enterprise. Let me tell you that in June last year, obviously most companies were primarily in the initial stages, right? Continuity, cost control, moving into resiliency. And that was the case as well in August, right? Companies moving along, becoming more digital enterprise. What happened in November? In November, companies were obviously thinking about more lockdowns in front of them. Lockdowns were looming. We could see them being obviously an obstacle in growth. And therefore, companies retracted and went backwards. Cost control, business continuity. What happened? They were not resilient enough. And I quote here, the IMF, who said back in October, the economic recovery will be long, uneven, and uncertain. Something is happening. Companies are not resilient. Why? What is holding back success? Well, so we run surveys, I have to admit, every month, because we are tracking business sentiment month by month. And what we understood in terms of top obstacles in digital transformation, know what these are the challenges, know from deriving business values, we invest in technology. It's interesting to see that the top challenges, at least top 4, have nothing to do with technology. In actual fact, number 1 and number 2 is purely organizational. Remember what I said at the very beginning? It's digital plus human if you want to really success in this new world. So number 1 is about siloed departments. People don't get together to face common challenges. And here we are thinking about organizations. It's inside your organization. Number 2, management and leadership. We have an all management mindset right now within organizations, doing, just running a model that simply doesn't fit anymore. Command and control, too many hierarchies. Number 3, lack of skills. Number 4, all KPIs, right? We're using all KPIs to measure a new reality. Nonsense. And number 5 is about technology, right? But I want to emphasize 1, 2, 3, and 4 have nothing to do with technology. They have to do with people and new ways of management. So what's the way forward? Right. The way forward, I'm here now, I'm using again another quote, this time from Einstein, is that you cannot use an old map to explore a new world, right? And how true is that? What we have in front of us is a new reality. So here is the future of work. Now, how the future of work can address the uncertainty and the new challenges we have in front of us. And that's me now coming up with this compass. A compass that has at the very center, let's say this is the core, are the principles of the future of work, at least this year, and I believe the next few years, is that whatever you do in digital, try to think that it has to be human first and purpose driven. It has to work for your people, and those and your people have to be connected to purpose, right? That's for me the core and center. And then obviously the compass is going to be moving all the time because we live in a fast changing world, very uncertain. So here I have come up with what I think will be 4 good coordinates, 4 good parameters that you can keep in mind as you move and readjust your strategy in this changing world. The hybrid workplace, organizational agility, leading with empathy, and the augmented workforce. And what I'm going to do over the next 10 minutes is to go in detail into each of these 4 parameters, let's say. Let's start with the hybrid workplace, probably the area where we've seen probably most coverage, most media coverage, right? And it's still very much top of the mind across HR departments, IT departments, everyone, and affects us, all of us, personally as well. What we are seeing, and I don't have the statistics here, is that because I have to admit every month keeps changing, is that whereas pre-pandemic, about 15% of European companies were saying that we have primarily a workforce working from home, 15%, post-pandemic or post-vaccine, that's going to increase to 27%. But again, this keeps changing, and that's why I didn't want to include that figure in this graph because it keeps changing, and we have right now a survey in the field. But just to tell you that only last month, we asked companies, what are the work practices that are going to most likely endure post-pandemic, right? And here you have a list of them. And this is Europe, by the way, over 400 companies in Europe. Number 1 is hybrid work, right? Is the work in the office, somewhere else, work at home. Number 2 is automation in workflows, meaning that we want to free up our people from mundane and repetitive tasks. And that applies to not just IT workflows, but also non-IT workflows, number 2. Number 3, the intelligent digital workspace, meaning that, yes, we want data, we want insight that help us monitor, manage, and secure the workplace. And particularly, and I want to jump to number 5, we want to provide a great employee experience. I have to admit, employee experience is the one area that in the last, probably since the pandemic, 14 months, has simply come up, not even at the board level. It's about delivering experiences internally and externally, and to employees, definitely. So how all this translates into something as simple as, to help desk, IT help desk. We are seeing, I wanted to obviously illustrate this area because the intelligent help desk is where in the last 6-7 months, I have got most inquiries from clients. It's a hot, huge area at the moment in transformation, in development. The intelligent help desk is about proactively, let's say, identifying issues, IT issues, before they become problems. It's about doing self-healing, automation, remediation, right? So you have intelligence in the background that can resolve IT problems. So your IT people, your help desk, doesn't need to get involved. It's about self-service so that you enable your people to resolve the problems, the IT problems with chatbots quite normally. But you don't need, again, to involve your IT people. So as you can see, and this is, again, the area where I got so many inquiries from clients. This is the area where it's about increasing, I believe it's the tier 0, the level 0 tickets. You want to automate, you want to do self-service, you don't want your people, your IT help desk to be involved. So increase layer 0 and decrease layer 1, 2, 3, and 4, where the IT help desk needs to be involved. This area, huge increase. And we are seeing the movement slowly, but as I said, I think it's a huge area for growth from SLAs to XLAs, experience level agreements. Second area, organizational agility. I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the obstacle for digital transformation that the organizational aspects are the biggest right now hurdles in the digital journey. Right, I try to put here what are the hurdles and how to address them. First thing that we need to say is that when we speak about agility, we mean two things. It's not exclusively about speed, it's about adaptability, right? And in order to, and for that, for organizational agility, we need to address two different areas. We need agility internally with our employees, we need agility with our customers, how we support our customers. And as you can see, for both areas, internally and externally, it's about delivering a great experience. Internally, to your employees, how we break silos, right? How you can deliver a seamless, one-stop shop experience to your employees. Well, something I'm saying a lot, actually, and this is particularly from advanced organizations, is the employee experience department. I love it. This is a department, I mean, sometimes it's the case of the HR department that has become that employee experience department. But anyway, it just combines the functions of HR and IT primarily, but also other functional areas, procurement, facilities, etc. And here it's about, again, it's making life easier to the employee and supporting them in the moments that matter. From the very beginning, from onboarding, but also in other areas such as, we're talking earlier before this session about going back to work. You have to go back to work. You need to book your desk. You need to book your parking slot. Everything can be done seamlessly. Support you and I on paternity leave and other areas. This is important internally. But then agility external, when you support your customers, right? And here is about, yes, try to make a flat organization so you can empower your employees, you can give them decision-making power, so reduce layers, as well as break silos. As you can see, different shapes, triangles, circles. It's about bringing expertise from different departments to work together, what is called teams of teams, right? And here is about working together, and the people who is leading the team doesn't need to be the person with most seniority. It's just the person who has the best expertise and the best skills to deliver that particular customer need. So it's about the skills. It's about trust, empowering. It's about giving your teams end-to-end accountability. And by the way, these teams run on data, meaning that they know exactly where they are, they know exactly where they have to be, and they get that data immediately, right? It's about having, what we call single source of truth. And it's about failing fast and learning fast. Again, this is very much what we call agile working. Living with empathy, another area where, again, is in huge evolution as well. I always put the analogy of the boat meaning that, yes, you can have the best racing boat in the world, but unless you have your crew with you, unless you have your people with you, you go nowhere. Also make sure you have North Star. No, you have a purpose in your company, because your crew, you need to engage them to a purpose, right? So this is part of a mission. And what we learned from the pandemic, and this is what I have at the top of this slide, and this is very much the business sentiment across many leaders, is that when you as a leader, when you care about your employees in return care about the company, and obviously that has an impact on customers, but has an impact on both bottom and top line revenue. And by the way, we know happy employees make happy customers, and it's still something that we need to repeat and repeat again. Has been studied, illustrated, empirically proved, as you can see here, from many different organizations, and even IDC. In our surveys, we show that companies with high employee engagement have also a good and they have happy customers, and they perform remarkably well. And the last segment in my compass, if you remember, the augmented workforce, which obviously is very relevant for this session. We asked, and again, recently, February, last month, what are the critical areas for automation this year, 2021? Remember the two big areas I mentioned earlier, changes in the workplace and customer support. These are the two big areas where we are seeing automation, as well as quality assurance and supply chain, right? We want to have a flexible, resilient supply chain. These are the four areas where we are seeing, again, important investments in automation. What does it mean in the way we work? What it means, and you can have here, you see here a list of key initiatives, is that we are going to see the workflows are going to be re-engineered, meaning that it's not about digitalizing current workflows. We need to re-engineer them because we want to work smarter. We're going to see more and more automation, AI, machine learning, helping us to handle complexity, handle big volumes of data, and giving us recommendations. We are going to have a single source of truth, because I'm sure that you and I personally, as an analyst, we spend hours and hours looking at different systems and trying to consolidate data from different sources. And it's time consuming. Single source of data allows you to know where you are, where you want to be. And new tools that allow employees to do the art of possible. I love the concept of tool democratization. You don't need to be data scientists, right, to use data. You don't need to work in the R&D department to innovate. It's about giving that power to the employees. And 1 minute left, so I just want to finalize with another quote. As you can see, my session has been about quotes. Belongs to Donald Rumsfeld, 20 years ago. Anyway, I'm using this quote just to finish the session. And he mentioned, as you can read the quote, he mentioned about two concepts which I think are very important. The known unknowns, something but what you know but you don't know. And the second concept, the unknown unknowns, the ones that you don't know that don't know. And what means the second part is probably the unknown unknowns is the concept I want to highlight here, meaning that put yourself maybe in the shoes or in the sandals of the old explorers 500-600 years ago, and think about the maps they had in the old days. Were very inaccurate, but they had the big, big vessels, the ships, and they have obviously the people with them. And for me, in my opinion, this is the reality we are right now. Ensure you have best of breed in technology, ensure you have the best people with you, and be bold, be brave, and and try to explore the new world that we have in front of us. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Chris. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Angela, and great insights there in terms of what's going on and what's happening. So welcome, everybody. Fantastic to speak to you all. I think some of you I do know as I've gone through some of the attendee list, and I apologize if I've already stalked you on LinkedIn. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of what's just happened, right, over the last year or so, and this new wave, if you will, of transformation. And then we're going to have a chat with Steve, who I've known a long time. And only realized a couple of weeks ago, we live about 30 miles apart, which is quite interesting. Now, who am I? What do I do at ServiceNow? I have this grand title of VP of Innovation. I don't sit in a dark room all day waiting for light bulbs to go off. So I run a team of evangelists around the globe and program managers that really work with you, our customers, our prospects, our partners, obviously such as Atos Engage ESM, on sort of where are we going, what are we doing, what are we seeing, what are people doing, and then how does that inform our sort of strategy and our go forward motion, if you will. I used to have a great special move of conquering jet lag with a team in 9 different time zones, but that's no longer. I think now it's the dishwasher, laundry, and remembering to take the bins out on a weekly basis is my new skill that I've acquired. So I'm quite happy with that. And I know Sean will be very happy with my choice of favorite food from a trip to Sri Lanka when we could all still travel. So like many, we sort of looked at this and, we went out and asked our customers around the globe and said, well, what's happening? What does this environment look like? And there's many sort of points in time in history of huge change and huge innovation that have sort of come from times of disruption or not necessarily pandemics, but, huge sort of people impacting moments. And what was really interesting, was that, and some of these questions have already come up in the chat, this reality that we're now in, we've all transitioned to these new ways of working, whether that's remote, some sort of hybrid model, just because we're not traveling and commuting doesn't necessarily mean we have more times for the dreaded Zoom meetings. But, we've kind of got into the mode, we've got into the model, and I don't think many of us are going backwards, right? It's this new pace, it's this new way of working, and at an exec level, almost 100%, 92 admitted that it's made them rethink the way we do things and the way we deliver services. And 87% of employees say it's better than what they were already doing. And that probably contributes a lot to sort of work-life balance as well. And, we saw massive acceleration. And in some cases, that was adoption of new technologies. We saw the classic sort of RFP, RFI cycles just slashed down to days and weeks from the traditional sort of months and bake-offs and proof of concepts and all those sort of things. We had to make decisions. And in some cases, burning platforms, legacy technology that aren't really suited to suddenly thousands of people connecting to them remotely and working with them for extended periods of time, suddenly our plans around sort of business continuity, resilience, disaster recovery, and so on, made us make these really sort of important decisions and fast that maybe them faster than when we're used to doing, right, in terms of those strategies of what it looks like. But then when you look at workflow in general and how does work move and flow around your organization, the luxury of knowing that, Hannah's down the hallway, Michelle's on the next floor, and we can bump into each other, chat, catch up, do whatever, all that's gone. And shooting emails isn't that great or productive for us. There's still a lot of offline type of activity and workflow that presence element of being near each other in a physical location, that's been removed. So it's forcing us to really think about the way we manage those systems and we maybe manage those platforms going forward. And, it's not the remote versus the return, it's the new way of working. We were just chatting before we started the webinar. We just had our Know Before You Go call. We're actually opening our UK office on Monday next week. And, there's lots of excitement. People want to get back, and it's the human side of it. And when we announced that, there's no snacks, there's no kitchen, there's no pantry services and those sort of things, the excitement came down very quickly because, a lot of that sort of interaction and social elements that people want, conference room can only have one person in at a time and so on. You sort of think, well, hang on, maybe there's a better way here. There's different ways of working. And I think with that, you now start to see new ways of working in terms of employment contracts, locations. We're seeing offices and office space being rebranded from that traditional model to sort of collaboration spaces, and a lot more hot desking, a lot more open seating and those type of things. And then you look at it the other way and see, there's been a lot of sort of people make statements, if you will, around what does the impact of being remote mean on the business moving forward. In some cases, there's financial issues. If you think about, I used to travel in and out of Canary Wharf quite a lot in London. There's real estate that's just going to become unused because you're not going to have that 150,000 people commuting every day down there. So what happens to it, and those sort of things where organizations that have made big investments in real estate and other things, and I'm working from home like many of you are. I'm quite happy, I'm quite comfortable doing that. I don't see a need to travel into London at any time in the future. And I don't think our customers do either, if we can be productive and very proactive in what we're doing at the same time. So then you say, well, how do we do all that, right? What does that now mean? So we talk about digital workflows a lot, and really sort of automation or even hyper automation in some cases, where you bring a lot of this technology together, and where potentially, you were spending or consuming resources and money and budgets on other operational type expenses. What we've seen a lot of customers do is use that money and that investment for other areas around innovation, recovery, growth, and any number of different things. A couple of calls I've done recently with heads of airports, as an example, Heathrow, Manchester, and many others. There are about 1,200-ish people a day at the moment in and around the airport, but they know when things sort of get back to an opening stage, they're going to be busy very, very quickly. So they're looking at now, what technology investments can they make to get ahead of it so that they're prepped and they're prepared should something occur, a situation pops up, but they're prepared, and safety is paramount, right, in terms of what they do and how they do it. But at the same time, new businesses have spun up. Existing organizations have pivoted and done new things. We've seen some disappear. We've seen new ones emerge. And that sort of investment in research and design, if you will, has gone up. And much to, I'm sure, Michelle's pleasing, there's more money going into marketing and advertising and sort of supporting those teams, right? Because we've got to find that audience. We can't go to physical events. I think historically, this probably would have been some venue somewhere around the country where we would have all got together and had a nice lunch, and, we'd had different speakers and breakouts, but that's not reality at the moment, so you have to think about how these models sort of come together. Now, when you look at the lens of our customers and the challenges that we see going on based on the results of all that survey, right? Old business models and processes start to fail, they creak, they fall apart, or they're just not relevant anymore. COVID, without sort of dragging that out, it's sort of exacerbated and accelerated this digital imperative and this need to change. Functional silos and platform silos to some extent create really poor experiences, and it's difficult to get work done, particularly when we don't have that concept of proximity or presence. CAOs have got to deliver on outcomes, and I'm sure Steve will touch on this when we chat, versus regular sort of run operations and keep the lights on. And then, knowledge workers, we need empowerment. We need to be able to self-serve. We need to be able to take that information and act and do something with it, not have a meeting about a meeting for a meeting we could have had that we're going to schedule and we're going to do something else. Let me just get on with it, right? Give me the information, surface that information, and let me start making smarter decisions based on that data and how you move forward. And it's not just IT, and certainly for us, we grew up in IT. When I was a customer back in 2006, yes, it was very much about IT with ServiceNow, but as our customers have sort of got on board with this workflow concept and this workflow revolution to some extent, you suddenly look outside of there, and where processes cross different departments and silos, they need to connect, they need to integrate, and the journey needs to come together. But also at the same time, these are all service providers in their own right. You know, some use spreadsheets, some use platforms, some might use something from Office 365. We saw Lotus Notes the other day, which gave me a few nightmares, but we're all sort of driving towards some similar outcomes of, you know, growth, productivity, and how do we get stronger at what we're doing, and that resilience of our business, if you will. So should something else occur, should we have some other sort of blip on the journey, whatever that may be, we're actually in a good place. We can absorb it and we can deal with it. Now, when you look at that from a sort of a strategic standpoint, most organizations have a traditional sort of multi-year strategy, a roadmap, if you will, of year 1, year 2, year 3. This is where our operating model will be. These will be our technology investments. Maybe we'll move to a new strategic platform. Maybe we'll migrate to cloud, application consolidation, rationalization, any number of different things, right? And they'll all come with technology investments along that journey. But what we've seen, and this has been happening over the last couple of years, is this more modern digital strategy, if you will. And the digital enterprise is at the corner, or one of the cornerstones of this, I would say. But there's a lot more involved that we're now looking at. You know, you've got competition, you've got to transform, because that also impacts talent and sort of how attractive are you as an organization to work for. You know, people look at you not only from that standpoint, but also social, corporate responsibility. You know, who are you? What are you? Do I want to be associated with you and your brand? So that puts pressure on it as well. The societal shifts in what's going on and what's happening, natural disasters, we all know. GDPR, the gift that keeps on giving, you know, on a daily basis. And then you have political forces within that as well, right? So you sort of say, wow, we've got all these things going on, not just, hey, we have a platform, we need to do something about it. But what actually happens within here is we get pulled. You know, if you think almost a year ago today, I think it was, you know, when the first sort of lockdown happened, we had the pandemic really kicking in. We all shifted and we deployed solutions, platforms, whatever they may be, to do those sort of things. Now we have to shift again. Something else has occurred in another part of the world or that's impacting our supply chain. So we sort of head off over that and we run towards that emergency, if you will. And while that's all going on, some new startup has popped up, or one of our other competitors has sort of accelerated, if you will, and delivered something new or innovative and really starting to chip away at our traditional business models and services. And you sort of look at that and say, wow, you know, that's lots of work to do, and we've got to expect people to pivot and shift and keep a good work-life balance and so on. But we've still got to do all these other things that potentially leave holes in the organization that maybe we forget about, maybe we miss the ball on, maybe we won't have time, right? And you say, well, they all need care and attention. They're all equally important at different points in time. What do we do? How do we bring all that together and make sense of it? And what actually happened is, you know, you have your traditional sort of application development teams or technology teams that really focus on those bigger, more strategic projects, if you will, that get a lot of the funding, the resource, the effort, and so on. But how do you start to plug these other holes? Because those things still need to happen. Those things still need to occur. And what this has meant is this rise, if you will, of the citizen developer and the low-code developers that are out there who, you know, they're not massive transformation projects necessarily, but it's about digitalizing those workflows that just need work and they need effort, but they need to come together seamlessly. And a big part of that is what goes into this digital enterprise concept. And that's all good, right? So you say, well, okay, we've got all these teams, got all these departments. How does work actually move between them? Because they're still siloed, even if you've got, you know, Azure, AWS, maybe you got ServiceNow, maybe you got Dynamics, you've probably got an SAP or equivalent. It's still sort of disconnected, if you will. It's not a great experience. It's difficult to maintain. And there's a heap of complexity and frustration within that. So you start to think about that and say, well, you know, if we step back and look at the personas and the journeys that we actually want to create, you know, is there a way to do that? So we talk a lot about now platform and journeys. And in this scenario, and on the next couple of slides I'll talk to, you know, it's most organizations have anywhere between 6, 8, maybe a few more key strategic platforms or bets that you make to run your business, right? And that's great, and they're all good at what they do. But if you're an employee, if you're an agent, if you're a manager, a board member, C-level exec, whatever, at different times of the day, you have micro moments where you do certain things. Maybe you're approving, maybe you're reviewing, maybe you're contributing, right? There's different elements within that that you sort of have to do. So what we talk about a lot is connecting these dots from a journey and a persona standpoint, not just because it's a cool thing for some enterprise architects and developers to do. We know things integrate with APIs and connect. That's great. But what's the journey through it? What are we actually trying to achieve as part of it? So if something starts in IT, it works through the system and ultimately ends up in our supply chain platform. That could be a process, it could be a workflow, it could be a piece of work, it could be a data element, right? Of how all that needs to come together. And the way we think about that is this now platform concept and this platform of platforms approach. And what it's trying to do, you know, when I was a customer back in 2006, it was very much, you know, put ServiceNow in and take something else out or multiple things out, but you still ended up with some bits around the side that you would end up sort of, well, what do we do with that? Do we integrate it? Do we replace it? Or it just lives over there and we'll figure it out in, you know, in a couple of years' time as part of the strategy. But now it's all about great experiences. So some of those experiences start and live and they die to some extent on mobile. There's things you can do on mobile, pinch, zoom, swipe, take photos, any number of different things, right? That are good interactive ways of doing things. And we're used to doing them in the consumer world that we all live in as well. And we sort of take for granted, but they're not that well used in the enterprise space. The other side of that is the web component, whether we're using Chrome, Safari, Edge, etc. I've got more real estate. I can put more information on the screen. I can surround it with knowledge or machine learning or analytics, etc., that I can help you make better decisions quicker. And then you have your conversational interfaces. So you may be using Teams, you may be using Slack, you may be using both. We see that quite a lot as well. But how do you service things like chatbots, virtual agents, so I can self-serve, but expose technology where the customer is or where the employee is, meet them where they're working and make it simple and intuitive, if you will, to do it. So use things like natural language to allow them to get to the things that they need to do. Not, hey, we're IT, we've launched this cool new thing. We need you all now to turn left and go over here for everything you need to do. And you're like, well, hang on, that's yet another thing I need to think about, another thing I need to log into. Is the data in sync? Does my profile make, you know, lots of challenges. Now, underpinning that are the workflows that we sort of prescriptively ship out of the box. So classic IT sort of, you know, instant problem change, CMDB, project, you know, operations, AI ops, and so on. The employee workflows is really about, this grew up, I guess, in the HR space, in case management, but has quickly turned into these moments that matter, that as we all sort of, you know, go on our employee journeys of being hired, being promoted, job change, life events that need dealing with, and so on, they're important journeys within workflows that we have to manage. And we try to provide as many of those as we can. And then your actual customers themselves, how do they interact with you? How do they get service? We've all done it. We've all called our banks and, you know, put your debit card number in on the phone, and you finally get through to a human being. They ask you for all the same information again, and you sort of say, well, that's not a great experience. You know, what are the ways we can solve that and automate a lot of that, because you know all about me, right? And then you have the creator workflows, which is, you know, build meaningful applications, that digital transformation piece with low code, no code developers and citizen developers, to get rid of those spreadsheets and those manual forms of the past and digitalize them on the platform and use technology to really drive them. Underpinning all of that is the core platform itself. And this is where, when we make acquisitions, we rebuild every single thing, put them into the core of the platform. So it's one platform, one data model, one architecture, not a mishmash of multiple things and we're expecting you to figure out the complexity. And then underneath all of that is the integrations. And this is an area that sort of over the last couple of years, as people have moved to cloud and even hybrid, you know, we have to integrate as part of the ecosystem. But what's the journey? Okay, you integrate with Workday. So what? Why? What's the path through that? If it's not easy for me to request leave or get information or update my profile information or my next of kin, probably not really that interested in doing it, and it will go out of date really quickly. So it's about creating journeys through this based on persona and the journey that those personas have, if you will, in those moments that matter. And that's very much what we talk about with the platform of platforms to make all that come together. And, you know, I was talking to a friend recently who's based in New York, who's a CIO, works for a big bank. and we were chit-chatting away, and he ended up writing some LinkedIn articles and other things. And I think this statement summed it up. And this was never about where you work. It's really about how we work together, right? And you sort of think about that and sort of the departments, the teams, the companies, the parts of the country we all live in and so on, or work in different teams. You think, well, there's got to be better ways of working together, right? We've got frustrations, we know that. But what if we're able to do this? And it's not always these massive transformation projects. In some cases, it's a small integration, it's workflow, maybe it's even automation using bots or something else that sort of we can bring together. You have a lot of technology in sort of your toolkit already. It's about finding the journey of those use cases to bring them all together and work better together, right? Which is a phrase we talk about a lot, is better together, not necessarily individual silos or individual platforms as part of that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into sort of what we're seeing, what we're doing, and how this shift is occurring to bring it all together. So now what I would love to do, Steve has joined us from Coventry Building Society. Afternoon, Steve.
Afternoon, Chris.
Good to see you again. I think that's 3 times in 11 years, right? Something like that we've worked out. So
about right, yeah.
Yeah, so cool. So for the audience and our 100+ guests, quick introduction, who you are, where you work, and what your role is there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chief Information Officer at the Coventry Building Society. We're a regional building society, but we're also a national one. We're the second biggest in the country. We've got £60 billion of assets under management. We're the largest self-employed lender. So if you're self-employed and you want to buy a house, we're probably the place you'll go. And we're also the largest buy-to-let lender as well. We've got some really loyal savers. We've got over 3 million savers. And it's a very interesting business. It's a mutual, 137 years old. When I joined the society in September 2018, it was quite dated. I think that's probably a polite way to put it. And much of the technology was older than my children, and my children are 33 is the oldest one. So much of the technology was very, very, very old, and it required quite a lot of work. So I kind of kicked off thinking about, okay, how am I going to, and this is kind of reflecting one of the questions that came through, how do you engage the board? How do you actually get the investment to make the difference? I thought that was such a good question, because someone has obviously been following the route and run into the problem. So how do you engage the board? How do you engage the executive committee? How do you get IT brought up to the top of the table and get this stuff sorted? So the first thing is that you need to insist that folks ask the right questions, because very often you get a question such as, why is IT so expensive? Okay, and the right question is, why is the governance so tight with all these gateway reviews every 5 minutes and dragging things to the board and burning project manager time so that we can't actually get on and do stuff? That's the question. And then the second question is, why can't IT deliver things quickly? Well, because you don't let us deliver things quickly. So the question you should be asking is, how do we organize ourselves so that we can get things delivered properly? So own the questions. Then the second thing is, you need to own the taxonomy. You need to own the language. So people were talking about technical debt, and the thing about debt is that you can leave it running. It doesn't matter, because you just have to pay the interest on it, right? But if you change the words to fragility, our payment system is fragile. Oh shit! I have to report to the regulator if my payment system falls over. Maybe we should do something about that. So own the language, own the questions. And then I think the next thing that you need to do is you need to start talking not in technology speak, but you need to talk about in business speak. And I've discovered really that there are 3 areas that business people are interested in. The first one that they're interested in is they want to know about agility. They want to know about if the competition makes a move and decides to put a green mortgage where the customers get a discount if they're investing in something that reduces energy consumption or the carbon footprint of the property that we're going to lend against. How do you get to market fast and meet that challenge? Because it's highly competitive. So agility, how do you set yourself up so you can meet business challenges? Then the second one is risk. The second one is risk because if the regulator is about to put you as a financial services industry, a company, into a section 166, which means that you're not meeting regulatory requirements, they're all over you. You can do nothing. You're dead meat. Dealing with things like internal audits and external audit points, and managing risk and talking about things in terms of risk and owning the language on that again, it's really, really important. And then the final one is cost. But you've got to be careful about cost, because when it comes to driving agility typically changes the business. It fundamentally changes the way that the business delivers and competes, kills the competition. And you can get as much money as you could possibly want to drive agility and drive that competitive edge. There is no limit. The other kind of stuff that you need to do is you need to be able to do stuff that that's important for running the business. So if your email system or your ServiceNow system doesn't work, you're quite likely to run into difficulties, aren't you? You know, if you can't recover documents and you can't do all that stuff, but you know, you can invest and make them wonderful, but it doesn't actually drive customer retention, new business profits, or any of the real business stuff. But you've got to do it. And then you've got the fragile stuff, the really fragile stuff, the mainframes and the Spark Solaris boxes with Oracle 11 databases at the back end. I speak from experience, quote unquote. You've got to deal with those differently, because again, at some stage, they go from fragile to being broken. And that means that you can't innovate anymore. You can't change things because you've got this great lump of history sitting there, and you've actually got to shovel it out and replace it with something that's a bit more modern. So you have to have the conversation and talk about things where cost is important. Your operational costs, yeah, you can drive that down. You can outsource stuff, you can automate stuff, but the really stuff that drives the business, you don't have to drive the cost out of that at all. That's about getting it done and getting it done quickly. And then the fragile stuff, there's always a story. Don't skimp on the fragile stuff. It'll come and bite you. So you engage with the business by owning the language, by owning the questions, and by framing the conversation in a way that the business actually understands.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. I love the dusty cobweb technology. It reminds me of the gym equipment behind Hannah, which I'm sure is a little bit dusty and cobwebby too. So, you know, without sort of, you know, rah, we love ServiceNow, just in terms of sort of the audience and, you know, your usage of the platform and that pivot that we all had in March last year, you know, what, as a CIO, where you had some platforms in place already, you've been a long-time ServiceNow customer, which is great. Were there others that you sort of had to go, oh, hang on, we need to pivot and shift here because, you know, our high street branches are closed, everyone's now working from home. Yeah. Were there any sort of compelling things you did in technology to support this new remote working? Yeah,
of course there were. So the way the Coventry works is we're a regional building society. The vast majority of our staff are on one site. It's in Binley, which is an area just outside of Coventry, on the outskirts of Coventry. And guess what? We didn't have any video conferencing at all, not even one. We had no reason to have it. Yep. We had an old-fashioned Cisco telephone system, but no video conferencing. Well, we stood up Zoom for 2,500 users in 3 days, which was somewhat of a challenge. Now, working from home, it was kind of cultural. People work from home, usually on a Friday. And that was kind of answering another question. Do leaders actually think that working from home is skiving or bunking off? I think possibly before COVID, some people would use working from home like that, but I don't think that's true anymore. I think actually everybody said, wow, working from home is actually more efficient than coming into the office. And the danger is that you're burning your staff out because they don't know when to stop. You know, ping, oh, there's a jabber message coming in, I need to go and answer that. And it's 10:30, you know, at night. So we also had to put in a brand new VPN system. Now, luckily, and this was pure luck, we'd actually put in some 10 gig bearers because we're about to move a data center. And I was able to leverage that, and in 2 weeks, we stood up a pretty shaky environment that allowed us to support close to 2,000.
Yep. Steve, I think you've frozen. I'm not sure if you can still hear me. Yeah, you're doing a good frozen moment, which is quite cool.
From home.
Oh,
so the crazy thing, why would you want to contact center? It was under extreme. Okay, sorry, right. So basically, yeah, our contact center is under extreme pressure. Most of our competitors, I could name most of the major banks. If you call them up for some support, you'd be waiting in the queue for sometimes days, not a joke. We managed to keep our answer time below 60 seconds through the whole COVID crisis. Now, we did that because we actually engaged the branch staff, because we reduced the hours of opening in the branch, maintained social distancing and things, and the branch staff actually helped. And we had to put some really neat technology in to support leveraging that contact center technology in the branch. So it made things much more flexible. Equally, we needed to deliver completely different types of end user computing. So we introduced Amazon Web Services, AWS Workspaces, because we needed powerful computers for our finance people that were directly connected to some of the relational databases for doing MI. And working from home on a domestic broadband service just wasn't going to cut it. So we had to be really quite innovative and really quite quick. And the great thing was that we were able to demonstrate that by throwing out the change management framework with all the gateway reviews and the nonsense, and asking the project managers to stay at home, we were actually able to deliver stuff extremely quickly. A really great example is we wanted for our intermediaries, we wanted to put in web chat so that we could improve the efficiency of our mortgage salespeople. We put in web chat, it took 7 weeks, and it cost £120,000 in total. The quote previously had been 18 months and £3 million. So that kind of demonstrated that a change of ways of working would actually work. And what we've been doing ever since is we've been looking at how do we do self-service? How do we do automation? How do we take out exceptions and simplify our business? And the board and the executive team are now talking about straight-through flow, digital journeys, customer experience, even common capabilities and all APIs. You know, we're having discussions about APIs at the board level because the board see that drives agility, and it's the stuff that we should be investing in. And in terms of ServiceNow, we've been a long-term consumer of ServiceNow. And through my career, I've used ServiceNow many times. In fact, Frank Slootman, who was the guy who took you guys public, I know him personally. I've known him for a long time, and so ServiceNow is something I've known quite a lot about for a long time. But we've leveraged ServiceNow because it's straight through workflow. We used it in a particularly conventional way initially, but what we've done now is we put in virtual assistants to help our service desk, again, to automate and reduce that human touch piece so that we can service people, service our employees much better. We've really done a lot of integration. We've integrated with Terraform using the integration hub so that through the service portal, we can go off and we can build our SDLC journey, so we can push software down a pipeline, and it's largely driven by ServiceNow automation. We've integrated our joiners and movers and leavers process with Workday and ServiceNow to make that simple and straightforward. We built a role-based approach for our employees. So you've got a particular role when you join, ServiceNow goes off and configures Active Directory and all of the single sign-on capability that you need to run your job. That is all about cycle time. How long does it take to service one of our employees, and cost? Because if you've got no humans in the chain, it tends to be a lot cheaper, and you end up with a lot of better sort of net promoter score and employee engagement. So it's all about removing steps, removing manual steps, self-service, getting things done right first time, because they're scripted and automated, and scripts and automation tend not to screw up as badly as human beings do. It also helps us with the regulatory compliance, because if we're doing things in a standard way, if we've got templates and we've got role-based security, then that just rolls straight off when it comes to being compliant. You know, your privileged access management works because you're compliant. You've got role-based access. So we've leveraged it, and I don't think we could have done what we have done without ServiceNow at the backbone.
Amazing. I love it. What an incredible journey, and sort of the decisions you've made have accelerated things and sort of, you know, positioned you now for moving forward. So we're out of time there, and I know we've got a couple of questions. So Steve, thank you. Appreciate it as always. And I'll be up the road. I know where you live soon enough. We'll grab a lunch or something, but I think I'm handing you back to Hannah or Sean. I'm not sure which. So either of you.
Well, we've had a good couple of questions throughout this, Chris, and I wondered if maybe we could position them to the three of you to see what your thoughts were. First one I think that could be really interesting to hear from you guys would be, how do you currently temperature check your employees' engagement and well-being?
Yeah, so I don't mind going first because we've just done ours. So we do regular twice a year surveys, the traditional sort of employee survey, but within that, every quarter we do pulse checks. So we have the bigger picture view of sort of, you know, the culture of the organization and sort of the strategy, where we're going, how people are feeling, but there are point in time ones as well every quarter. And the last one was very much about workload, stress, balancing time, but also, do you have the right technology? Because as the pandemic sort of extended, if you will, we've just gone from employee choice of work from home from June until September. And as part of that, we're also redefining certain roles, such as what does it mean to be work from anywhere as a defined sort of situation? What does that mean for you? And within that, who wants to be part of it? So we do that, and we take that into sort of what we have is a 5-point plan, and we do monthly all hands at the moment, and we read those out, what those results are, and then what we're going to do about them in the coming weeks as part of it. And some of that is sort of continue, monitor, deal with it. Others have seen us change some of our strategy completely. Around investments in real estate, reopening, policies for working remotely, which is now you're working. We don't really care in the nicest sense where you are and what that looks like. But then also, how do we up certain things where maybe you need an additional monitor? Maybe that chair that you were using isn't as good as it was. Maybe you need a new one. So we've done things to allow employees to get the equipment they need to be productive, but also comfortable and successful in what they're doing, whilst they've still got the choice to work from, you know, wherever they need to work.
Really insightful. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And what about you, Steve? What are you doing at Coventry Building Society?
I'm going to be embarrassing now. I was so busy typing an answer to another question that I wasn't.
Boring.
Let's be honest, truth, okay? That's transparency for you.
Oh no, don't worry.
Well,
Shall I repeat it? It was how are you currently temperature checking your employees' engagement and their well-being?
Right, that's such a great question, because actually, just like all organisations, we've got a whole bunch of subject matter experts. There they're a small cadre of people who've either been around for a long time or they've got unicorn skills that are very difficult to get, and everybody goes to them. They're the go-to people. We all recognise that, and they are really under a lot of pressure. So what we do is we make sure that we deal with our subject matter experts, like cash resources and you know, capital and OPEX and all that sort of stuff, and we make sure that we don't overburden them. And then we prioritise the things that we do. So if you like, we've got a backlog, and the stuff at the top of the backlog has got the priority. If there's something further down, it doesn't matter that a senior member of the executive team wants it done. Tough, right? We've got a backlog and we're working through it, and we have to be disciplined. I think one of the great things that the bad things that firms do is they have a scattergun approach to this, and they say, we'll do this, this, and this, and they overburden the team. So that's really important. The second thing is that we have a mood meter on our intranet, and just like, you know, sometimes you go to a washroom, you say, is it clean, is it dirty, whatever. We have that for our staff, and so staff can say, you know, I'm not feeling great, or I'm feeling top of the world. And so we measure this stuff and we manage it at the executive level. It's really, really important to us. We have we use a tool called Slido for engaging with our people, and they can ask questions about things and complain. They can do it anonymously if they want to. We have town halls where we listen to questions and transparently explain to people what's going on. And one thing that I did, which I think is brilliant, because I put between 12 and 1 in everybody's diary, safe time. Safe time is, you're not supposed to have meetings in safe time. So you can take some time off, you can go and walk the dog, or go and have lunch. And that's been really popular.
I love that.
Yeah.
We, it's funny you say that, Steve. We once a month, and it changes every month, team member gets to vote one day of the month is no meeting Friday or no meeting Thursday. And whatever you choose to do, if you don't want to be online, don't be online. If you want to go do something, but you cannot be in meetings, and it's one day a month. And we all buy into it. And if, you know, we have to move work around or do things to other days, it's all supported and it's all part of what we do. And I think you're right, you have to block that time out, because otherwise you'll sit in front of these damn things all day long and you're not productive after 3 or 4 hours anyway. So, you know, you need that break. I think it's brilliant.
Wow, they're fab concepts, really interesting. Thanks both. Michelle, Hannah, do we have time for one more question, do you think?
I think if we go for one more question, that would be awesome. Thank you, Sian.
Fab. Okay, because I think this one could be really interesting too. Do you think that the balance of power is shifting from the employer to the employee in deciding where they want to work and how flexibly they want to work now as a result of the last 12 months, really, I guess? Who wants to take that first?
I'll have a go. I think it's actually not just COVID. I think it's also Generation Z. You know, if you're used to having great technology, you reject racism, you reject sexism, and you don't want to work somewhere where it's like that. So you go in and you look at how the organization's set up, and if it's not set up properly, you don't want to work there. So if you haven't got a diverse workforce, it's likely to be that you're, particularly for Generation Z and some millennials, it's likely to be because you're not the kind of organization that people want to work in. And I actually don't think it's to do with salary.
Really,
I would agree. It's I've done a lot of recruitment and interviewing lately around our summer intern programs, and they've done their homework. They know what we do. They know what we would sort of, you know, the way we work, but they want to know about what do we do with things like DIBS, diversity, inclusion, belonging. You know, what does my team look like? You know, I actually do have a 50-50 split of male and female across the globe. But they look at you and say, you know what is it you stand for? What's your purpose as an organization? You know, what philanthropic things are you involved with, and so on. And those traditional, you know, models, if you will, and organizations, the talent's not going to go to them. They don't want to be associated with that. And, you know, if you think about this, sort of the gig economy, where they're not looking for careers either. They're looking for moments where they learn and they get new skills, and they want to move on somewhere else and have another challenge and learn even more skills as part of it. So, you know, yes, I've been here 9 years. I don't know how many more of the employees we hire this year would be here for 4, let alone 3. You know, so I think you're right. It's changed for the better to some extent. But also, you know, if I talk to my daughters, they're different conversations that I had when I was that age. Good Lord. They're obviously more intelligent than me, but, you know, it's different. And I think you have to recognize it and embrace it.
Yeah, it's definitely a new way of working, and that definitely we are seeing. And this, by the way, it's not just newer generations; it's across the board. Good talent is asking for that flexibility. Hybrid working is here, and by the way, how much emphasis has been put in the past around customer experiences. Well, now I'm not going to say shifting. Is that there's been a wake-up call. It's also about employee experiences. But yeah, we'll see what happens over the next few years. But yeah, good talent will ask for flexibility. So the power has been definitely put on them. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Thank you
Thanks, Hannah.
so much. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, Angela. We've come to the end of this session, and Angela, a powerful takeaway to think about, in that we are aware of the known unknowns, but what about the unknown?
Unknown unknowns, right?
Yeah, a challenge that resonates today more than ever. Steve, thank you so much as a customer of Engage for the last 18 months. We've been on an awesome journey together, and we're truly grateful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today. I think everyone will agree it's been an inspiring session, and join me in thanking you. And thank you to all of our audience, to all of you for spending your lunchtime with us. I hope it's been valuable use of your time, and we've succeeded in providing some answers to some really engaging questions. Plenty of food for thought, if not stopping our tummies rumbling, sorry. Thank you to ServiceNow, to Michelle, boundless energy, enthusiasm. We can't do these events without you, Michelle, awesome. And Chris, always a delight to listen to the latest thoughts and insights. And on that point, I'm delighted to announce and invite you to our follow-up event. Tuesday, as you can see on the screen, Tuesday 27th, Chris will be joined by Jeremy Cooper, Senior Director of IT Operations with Charles River Laboratories, to share their experience of their decision to move from legacy system to ServiceNow, and how they opted for a back to basics approach focused on the business, not the technology, and very aptly how hearts and minds were and are central to the success that they're experiencing. Finally, thank you to the Engage team for making this session possible. I hope everyone's found it useful, it's valuable. Be bold, be brave, explore. Thank you, Angela. And as a follow-up, we will share the recording and the links to register for the next event on the 27th for the intriguingly titled Journey to a Cake. Thank you very much, all.
Thanks, everyone.
One last thing, we are going to be sending out a survey to all who attended. We will also make the recording available to everybody. Please fill that out. Please come back and give us your feedback. It's imperative. We think we've had a fantastic session. We hope you have too. So please come back and let us know what you think. Thank you so much to our guests. Steve, Angela, Chris, thank you so much. Take care all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.